Here in Los Angeles. This is going to be hugely exciting to see what will happen as the drivers are ready to go for the start of this race. Let's work out how they all line up on the grid. The sprint race decided it just a few moments ago, and it sees Jose Serrano, the championship leader, lining up on pole position. Kylian Drumont is alongside him on that front row of the grid. Row 2 is headed by the quadruple world champion Takuma Miyazono, with Kai de Bruyne, the debutant podium man from Berlin, alongside. Then Paul Ura heads the third row of the grid in 5th place ahead of Thomas Laboutelet, who started last in the sprint and managed to get to 6th in the checkered flag. He's just in front of Takuma Sasaki and Adriano Carrazza. Next up on the grid, you've got Guy Barbara in P9, and completing the top 10 is Angel Inestrosa, whose mistaken strategy cost him very dear. Valerio Gallo, second in the championship, lines up P11 ahead of this grand final, and Samuel Cardinal P12 as well. Now, we've got a difference in tyres at the start of this race. Soft, medium and hards available for the drivers. A lot of the drivers there starting on the medium tyres, but three, Barbara, Inestrosa and Gallo, going for the hards at the sharp end of this race. What do you think that's all about?
I think it's exactly what we discussed. It's thinking how to do something different, especially for Valerio Gallo, who comes in this race second in points, having a disastrous sprint race there, puts him at the back of the field. He's thinking maybe not just about winning, but it's just moving himself forward towards the points. You have to do something different, knowing he'll be in a bit of traffic early on, and see if this could work to his favor. Yeah,
I imagine the idea, of course, with the hard tyres is get it out of the way as soon as you possibly can. The hard tyres like lava, basically. You don't want to be on it for as short as a distance as you possibly can, given the pace difference between the soft, medium and the hard tyres. So get them out of the way, get yourselves onto the medium or the soft tyres, and make some progress in the mid to the latter stages of this race. But Jose Serrano will lead the field around the final corner and across the line as we get the grand final underway here for the Nations Cup in Gran Turismo World Series 3 in Los Angeles. We're at the Daytona Road course and we're coming down towards the first turn, with Serrano leading from Kylian Drumont. On the brakes we go. Already moves being made in the background there, with Cardinal having more grip under braking. He was looking for a move on Valerio Gallo. Also, Ura coming under pressure from Thomas Laboutelet as well. We come to the infield section for the first time. Pretty even Stevens and pretty fair and sharp at the front of the field, but let's see how it all works out as we come through the fast left-hander and in towards this hairpin.
Yes, the other horseshoe. The first one's the international horseshoe. This shoots you towards turn 6, which leads on to the first portion of the banking, one of the most important corners on this racetrack. It's tough to get the power down right here. The track kind of falls away to the outside. You see a little wiggle there from Miyazono. That will happen lap after lap.
Yeah, no doubt about it. On board here we are then with Kylian Drumont on the banking then. You can see Jose Serrano's gone for a low part of the banking there, and he's able to hold the speed quite nicely. We come down in towards what was known as the bus stop chicane, now known as the Le Mans chicane. We flick it through that left-hander. You can hear it's just sort of a courtesy lift as you go through there. Shift it down the gearbox and run it as close to the grass, and clip the grass actually on the outside of it. But Jose Serrano doing a great job leading this one. A couple of tenths in front of Kylian Drumont. Here though is Takuma Miyazono sitting in the wheel tracks of Kai de Bruyne. You've got Paul Ura and Thomas Laboutelet very close behind indeed, and here comes Kylian Drumont. Side by side he is now with Jose Serrano to take the lead of the race as we come across the timing line for the first time of asking. He's through and into the lead. He's kicking off behind there as well. You've got Kai de Bruyne, who is side by side with Takuma Miyazono as we come through the first corner. De Bruyne now up and into third place.
And you saw how tight it was. They were 2 by 2 by 2 down into turn 1. You saw the pass there by Drumont around the outside. That's the effect of the draft, and you're going to continually see that throughout this race. Drivers, as long as they stay close enough together through the infield portion, there's so many opportunities to make passes utilizing the draft through the oval portion of the Daytona road course. And that's what every driver's thinking as they go here towards turn 6. How can I get the best run to stay as close as I can and then utilize that draft to make a pass?
Yeah, on board here then with Thomas Laboutelet. So he's made a position up from where he started. He was P6 on the grid, just to remind you. He's now up into 5th position at the expense of Paul Ura. Barbara, Inestrosa and Gallo, they were the 3 outliers. They started this one on the hard compound of tyre, and you wonder how their race is going to play out. We come down then in towards the chicane once more, and it's kind of damage limitation for those 3 drivers in the opening stages of this race here, Parker.
Right, that's really, you look at Gallo in last right now, utilizing those tires. You see how long they choose to stay on them. Probably the shortest amount of time possible, then to get to the mediums and the softs as we're on board with Miyazono now. Oh, look to the inside. Now pops to the outside, possibly. Didn't quite have the momentum right there. He chooses to stay behind Laboutelet to the outside right now into one. That's usually tough. The track is off camber there. If you get too far to the outside, you just sort of fall away from you.
Yeah, Drummond and Serrano were side by side for the race lead at that point there as well, but Laboutelet is throwing the kitchen sink at this one, or at least trying to, on Takuma Miyazono. They come through that first hairpin, but nothing doing for them at the moment. De Bruyne sitting in third position, just keeping his powder dry at the moment. Just doesn't want to let the likes of Drummond and Serrano get away. Subsequently, they want to be a little bit careful about battling against one another, because if they do, it'll drop them right into the clutches of the prevailing field, and they are hungry and ready to pounce.
Yeah, you don't want to be side by side. So here in turn 6 on the banking right now, and I have to wonder if Jose Serrano sort of let Drummond get there just to utilize a little bit of draft. We talked about fuel saving could possibly be a part of this race. They can't quite go the whole way on a tank without a little bit of fuel saving, so that could be some of the thought process there of dropping the second and utilizing a bit of that draft to save some fuel.
So on board here then with Thomas Laboutelet. What are the key parts of this circuit here, Parker? How do you set a fast lap time? How do you make sure that you've got the secrets of Daytona?
In most cars, I would say the infield for sure, the international horseshoes, and the turn 6 leading on the back straightaway, and then your X out of the bus stop. In the X 2019, I'm not quite sure. It's incredibly fast. The bus stop is not a traditional course. You see Serrano go to the outside, Drummond. I guess he wasn't saving fuel, of course, like I said, because he chooses to go back to the lead right now. And sometimes you see that at this racetrack in certain cars where you use that. Oh, we got De Bruyne spinning out there.
Yeah, big moment there. De Bruyne, the big loser in all of that. And we saw other drivers going off onto the grass. Sasaki's dropped down the order as well. So that's kicked off in the sort of battle for the podium places there, really. The upshot is it's now Serrano that leads, Drummond in second, and Miyazono is up and into third place, Laboutelet into fourth position. So we've lost one of the competitors from that battle for the podium, and Miyazono and De Bruyne are now under investigation with one another for that collision. I'd love to see a replay, because we only really caught the back end of that crash, and I wonder whether Miyazono was the aggressor in that instance. Through onto the banking we go for the 4th time out of 30, and we've got to keep an eye on the tyre wear for the mediums as well, because of course they're a bit of a halfway house between the hards and the softs. Let's have a look at meanwhile what happened here to De Bruyne with the Laboutelet in the background. There was a bit of contact between himself and Miyazono. How'd you read that one?
So that is a very typical incident at Daytona Road Course, and it's the fact that as you come off of turn 1 there, the track goes back to the left a little bit, so that outside car is put in an awkward position where they have to get left. The inside car doesn't want to give them that space like Miyazono did, and you have that altercation and they come together like you saw. That's very typical at this racetrack. We see it in almost any race you have here, so this is really tight. 2x2x2 down to turn 1 amongst all these drivers.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. Look at Estroza with the inside line. I thought he was going to have a Dandem lunge to the inside. Sasaki and De Bruyne are also going wing mirror to wing mirror as they make their way through the first corner. I tell you what though, for the likes of Estroza, Gallo and Barbara, this is actually working out quite nicely for them, because they're now on the back of some medium shot runners, and it'll just give them the impetus there to try and hold on to the back of them, even though they're on a slower compound of tyre. You can see Estroza pulled alongside Sasaki, but Sasaki with the mediums, just great at tracking out the corner, nothing that Estroza can do, and himself, Gallo and also Barbara need to be a bit careful they don't get involved in squabbles amongst one another and let those two drivers get away too much, because it could come back to bite them later on in the race.
And one of the things they're doing there, they love to see them close enough to the infield, because that allows them to utilize the draft again through the banked portions and essentially stay closer than they naturally would on just pure lap time with those slower tires.
On board here then with Jose Serrano as we come through the bus stop then, you see how much curb and grass they're clipping. They are literally millimeters away from disaster. And the thing is with these cars, you drove it yesterday, Parker, they are tricky on the limit, because all the torque's at the top end of the rev range.
Super tricky there when you get the throttle down. Drummond goes to the outside here. Jose Serrano, he's going to utilize this pass we've seen twice from these two. And sometimes this actually can look like battling, but it's almost working together at this racetrack, because the draft is so powerful. When you're in Jose Serrano's position there, you let Drummond do that, then you'll get the toe the next time around through the banking, and vice versa. You'll swap positions lap after lap like we're seeing from those two.
Estroza and Barbara battling. It might be for the last positions in this race at the moment, but it might come back into their favour later on. You can see them very close to one another. Valerio Gallo, again, not made too much of an impression on this race, but he's playing the long game here. This is what all of these drivers, Gallo, Estroza and Barbara, are doing. They've started on the hard compound tyre. They've gone ugly early, haven't they, really, here? Trying trying to make sure that they've got that tyre out of the way as soon as they possibly can, so they'll be on a quicker set of compounds towards the end of the race, whereas of course everybody on the medium tyres, depending on which way they go in terms of the strategy, will have the harder tyre to do at the end of the race.
Where'd you come up with that term?
It's something you use in nightclubs in the
That's
UK. I'm glad that one translated. I'm glad that one translated across the pond. On the brakes they go in towards the chicane. Then look at Miyazono. He's all over the back there of Jose Serrano. And again, they're overtaking one another. They're changing positions, but it's nothing to get too excited about at this particularly early stage of the race, because you know that they're just giving each other racing room. They're not fighting these positions too hard, the ones that are being attacked, and they're just again waiting for the right moment to go, because it's when the pit stops come out that's what nobody knows is going to happen, because even though you're on the medium tyre doesn't mean they're all going to go for the soft tyres in the mid stint. They might go for the hard tyres, or they might decide to play a different strategy. We have seen drivers doing 2 stops, we've seen some doing 3 stop strategies as well, which is a bit of a road call, I have to say, but sometimes it does pay off.
And what they're close to doing, these front four, is actually getting away from Paul Ura, who's in 5th by enough of a gap that he wouldn't have the draft anymore. He's just over 2 seconds from the leader, about a second behind 4th place here. So if they continue to work together, utilizing the draft, they could separate themselves from Paul Ura and sort of have their own pack.
Absolutely. Well, Valerio Gallo will be hoping to make some progress from 10th at the moment. He finishes there. He's more disappointed than Arusa, who's just had his tonsils out, to be completely honest with you. But there's still plenty of time for this race to unfold. We're not even 1/3 of a distance through it as we ride on board here with Thomas Laboutelet. You can see there Takuma Miyazono, as part of his routine, always listens to a particular song the night before every race, and it's always interesting that race drop. I'm not familiar with it, I must be honest with you, but I'll give it a go, to be honest, because Takuma Miyazono he's a quick driver, and I could probably learn a thing or two to pick up my pace.
I could use that too. I would like something like that.
Did you have
any help there is?
Do you have any superstitions when you go racing, like putting one boot on, or one before the other, or you know?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I try to put the left on first.
You do?
Yeah.
I always find it.
Left glove.
I'm exactly the same actually when I go racing. But to be honest, I'm so slow it doesn't really make much of a difference. Anyway, side by side with Serrano versus Drummond as they change positions once more down the start-finish straight and into turn 1. Miyazono, Laboutelet very close to one another behind there as well. And you can see Laboutelet again. He's just looking a bit threatening, and Miyazono picks up a penalty then.
Wow.
A 1-second penalty for that collision that we saw earlier on with Kyle Brun.
And I think that's the correct call in a lot of respects. You know, he was there. He didn't give him the room. On the exit, he drove into the left rear of De Bruin and spun him out, and so you get a penalty.
Yeah, it's a shame for De Bruin because he's sort of spoiled his race there, really. I mean, he's on the coattails of the likes of Sasaki, etc., but it's not where he should be relative to the pace that we've seen for him, and that's how different these events can be. You know, last time out in Berlin, he was on for his first podium, and he was absolutely delighted with that after having fought for it for such a long time. And it's sort of hero to zero stuff here, this one as well. Now, for Takuma Miyazono, he's got that penalty, so he's going to drop behind Laboutelet, of course, but it might drop him even behind Paul Ura because they're not too far adrift, and that penalty zone is at the quickest point on this circuit. So we're coming through in towards it now. You'll see the 2 yellow markers either side of the track, and you lose, of course, that 1 second in terms of the penalty time, but you also lose that time getting back up to speed there as well. So Laboutelet is going to fire past like Miyazono's just stuck the handbrake on.
Wow.
And there he goes.
This is going to be a huge penalty.
Yeah, so he drops down then behind Thomas Laboutelet, and where is Ura? He's right on his gearbox then, just a 1/10 of a second behind. Laboutelet's profited from it. He's up into 3rd place. Our first pit stop takes place meanwhile. Inestrosa from 12th and last in this one has pitted from the hard tyres. Now, where does he go in this? Does he go for the mediums? Does he go for the soft compound of tyres? And crucially, when's he going to take some fuel on board as well? We're quite early into the race, so not really too much point, but this is the moment that cost Miyazono and also De Bruin as well. And there's the penalty that Miyazono just served.
And you can see there where Miyazono just went to the right at the same point that De Bruin was going left. It's just a classic collision here, but he was definitely in the wrong, not giving him the racing room he needed.
No doubt about it. Inestrosa then onto the medium compound of tyres for his first of 2 pit stops at a minimum in this race. So he'll now be on the same tyres as the majority of the field in this one, but of course they'll be significantly fresher than everybody else at this stage in the race as well. You can see that there. 40% of the rear tyres are left pretty much for all of the drivers inside the top 10 that are on the hard compound of tyres, whereas Inestrosa, a brand new set of fresh mediums, they're going to feel so lovely compared to the hards he was on.
And you know, in super speedway racing and NASCAR, when you race at Daytona, you want to pit in a pack because you want to utilize the draft. You don't want to be out there by yourself. I think this is very similar, and we'll see many of these drivers try to pit together because they're going faster, utilizing that draft than they would be just by themselves. Even if you've got those better tires, you want to have to utilize the draft to turn really fast lap times.
And you can see these drivers at the sharp end of this one here, Parker. Obviously, they're all working together at this point. They're in a race with their shoelaces tied to one another here at this point, but eventually they're going to have to undo those shoelaces and start fighting. It's loads of time still left to go in this one.
This is one of those races where you see 12 lead changes and it's like, wow, that sounds awesome, but it's not the full story. They're working together, utilizing those lead changes to have the fastest lap times and not slow each other down.
You can see exactly what it would mean for Jose Serrano if the checkered flag fell now, though. It would be another 6 points in his arsenal, and it would give him quite a commanding advantage as we go into the World Finals. And, you know, fair play, because he really would deserve it, but there's so much time left to go. And I suppose if you're the likes of Kylian Drumont and Thomas Laboutelle here, how do you play this in terms of your strategy for this race? Because do you follow what Serrano's doing in the hope that you'll keep track position?
I would, personally, just utilizing the draft, being able to follow him, knowing he's the fastest driver here, most likely the winningest driver of the season. You think, if I follow him, and with the draft, you don't know what can happen, what you can pull off in that final stint, so stay as close to him as you can. There's no reason to try something different when you're this close and have the draft in your favor.
Just to give you an idea of the difference in pace between Angel Enestrosa and the sharp end of the field. Last time around it was 1:28.8, which of course wasn't a full flying lap because he was out of the pits. That was an out lap for him over the course of that one. But just to give you an idea of the first sector, he was about a second or so clear of anybody else last time around. So really impressive stuff there for Jose Serrano, and we'll see what it means for him later on. Barbara and Gallo, they managed to extend those hard tyres a little bit later on. They pitted a couple of laps after Angel Enestrosa here, which means their tyres, whichever they go on to, will be a couple of laps newer. So it'd be interesting to see how that works out for them, because we did see that in the Manufacturers' Cup earlier on this evening. I won't spoil the result for you if you haven't caught it. I do implore you to go to do it because the racing was spectacular. But we saw some drivers pitting early, and ultimately they ended up paying the price for that because they lost track position.
They did, but if you can turn the fast lap times after this, especially on those tires, that's going to help you. The hard part is that these leaders are continuing to work together and utilizing this draft, and so that's just going to make it tougher, even if you're by yourself on better tires, to make up that time. Maybe as I look at some of the lap times, you can get close to their lap times, but to be faster than what you want when you're on those tires, to make up that time and make up some track position, is going to be a really tall task.
Yeah, no doubt about it. On board then we ride here with Thomas Laboutelle with that relatively clear view down towards the first corner. Drumont and Serrano, and again just keeping him honest at this race. Sasaki's picked up a penalty here. You can see that with the flashing red dot next to his name. Not quite sure what that is all about, but something to keep an eye on there for him, presumably because we didn't see anything come up and it'll be down to track limits. But he's coming into the pit lane at the end of this one. So he's the first of the medium job runners, the drivers who started this race on the medium tyres, I should say, that has pitted then. So let's see how he plays this in terms of that strategy. But you can now see it's gone from what was a three-way fight up to a now five-way fight, because Miyazono and Yura are right in the picture here.
Yeah, that penalty for Miyazono really pulled Yura back up into this front 4 cars, and now it's sort of a 5-car train that leads this race right now, because he was about 2 seconds back from the leader, a second back from 4th, but when Miyazono got his penalty, he was able to utilize the draft with Miyazono to get back to this front pack, and now it's expanded to 5 cars in this lead pack.
Yeah, let's see how these drivers are going to play this one. And as you said, you would imagine it'd be a case of follow the leader, whoever blinks first from
I would
this.
think, but
yeah.
I haven't been right very often.
Well, I'm almost never right, to be completely honest with you. Down towards the braking zone we go of that chicane, threading the eye of a needle through there. So Sasaki went from the mediums to the hards then. So if you're the drivers that are up ahead of that, are you going to go and do the same? I suppose that's the risk though, isn't it? You go to the hard tyres and sort of deal with that pain in the middle stages of the race, which then would leave you the soft tyres at the end of it. But if you did the reverse of that, of course that would leave you vulnerable at the end. So it's so difficult to work out. This is all going to work out. Obviously you've got fuel to consider in this one. Whoever is, might be saving fuel. If you're the likes of Thomas Laboutelle, you're just sitting in the slipstream, maybe you can do a bit of lift and coasting, save a bit more fuel. save maybe a couple of seconds on the pit stop, which could give you track position after it's all worked out.
I have to think Labutale is doing that because I've watched him continually have the chance to go by Jose Serrano here and poke to the outside, and he chooses to stay right behind him. We see some Carrazza on pit road right now, going to the hard tire, and I think that's, you know, for him, Labutale there riding, that's definitely his thought process. As I'm in the lead pack, my advantage here would be how can I make that pit stop the shortest amount or not have to take much fuel at all by staying here in the draft and saving fuel.
Yeah, more medium shot runners, Carrazza and Cardinal going on to the hard compound then in the middle stint of this race. And you can see the drivers at the sharp end of this one, their rear tyres are now looking pretty second-hand. So you would imagine it's going to be this time around that they're going to be coming into the box. Let's see who decides to dart in. We're coming towards the chicane for the 13th time of asking. Threading it through there.
You can see the throttle trace right there as he got towards the bus stop, just feathering it a little bit before they got to the braking zone, just standing there right behind Drummond.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They're surely going to have to come into the box then at the end of this lap. I think they're just going to be pretty much bound by circumstance then, really. And Drummond, as he is side-by-side here with Jose Serrano, it's a race into the pit lane here. He's trying to get track position to give him more position on the exit of the corner. Now, are they all going to follow the same strategy in terms of the tyres? Drummond, Serrano, Labutale, Miyazono, De Bruyne, all into the box for this one then, as well as Pol Ura. And if they all go to the hard compound tyre, it'll be all's fair in love and war. It'll be pretty even Stevens, but if someone goes to the soft tyre, plays a bit of a gamble, or maybe takes on some fuel at this stage, and I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're just going to follow everybody else's strategy because, you know, though it might give them an advantage now, they'll have to take that pain a little bit later. And indeed, you can see Jose Serrano exiting this one in the lead, but with Labutale and Drummond right on his gearbox then as they all filter out onto the race circuit and make their way through the hairpin for the 14th time after their first pit stop has now taken place.
And that was such a sneaky move by Serrano into pit road, utilizing the draft, got to the outside to be side by side as they hit pit road. That gives him a little bit of advantage as they hit pit road to the line. He gets the lead out of the pits, now back where he wants to be, and on these hard tires, we'll see, this could potentially be a place where within his pace, could he stretch that gap to the infield to maybe try and get away and break this draft slightly? Yeah,
it's so difficult to break a slipstream on this circuit though. That is the problem, isn't it? Because it's just a slipstream style of circuit really, where you're running to the checkered flag with drivers very close behind. So plenty of time for this one to play out, and well, Jose Serrano there, just 0.3 of a second the advantage he now has over Thomas Labutale, who's ascended himself up into second position after starting this one in 6th place. Samuel Cardinal's also made some good progress in this one. He's into P7 as well, in front of Guy Barbara and Valerio Gallo. In Estrosa's where he started, if you remember, he was the first driver to pit in this race. He went from the hard tyres onto the mediums, which is a good strategy in terms of giving him a bit of clean air, a bit of track position, but it might come to pay him in the backside a bit later on, as we see Guy Barbara with Valerio Gallo side by side into the braking zone. Barbara with the advantage then, and with track position now, and into 7th place. Gallo and Cardinal slot in behind.
That was a really brave move there by Gallo to the outside. He knew the clear Cardinal on the inside, but stayed there with Guy Barbara on the inside, down to turn 1. Couldn't quite make it work as you just don't have the grip on the outside. But with these medium tires, he's showing some great pace as he tried to move forward from the back of the pack early this race. Yeah,
through into that right-hander as we ride on board here with Valerio Gallo. You can see the steely face of concentration for the 2021 Nations Cup World Champion. The results have not been particularly forthcoming over the course of this evening here in Los Angeles, but he does still sit second in the championship as it stands for now, just 3 points adrift of Jose Serrano. As we look at fact there for Guy Barbara at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, he's currently in P7, the leading medium shod runner in this race. Just to remind you, Barbara, Gallo and Inestrosa all of course started this one on the hard tyres. They're now on the medium tyres in the middle stint.
Guy Barbara started driving Gran Turismo at 7 years old. I think I was the same.
Oh yeah.
It was just not this Gran, it would have been Gran Turismo 3.
Yeah, it's so interesting how everyone's got a story when it comes down to Gran Turismo. You know, talking to some of the audience here in LA, everyone's of course had some experience with the Gran Turismo Championship as Labutale now gets a bootful of Jose Serrano into the back of him there through turn 1. That's left Drummond with the inside line and a possibility to try and attack as they go side by side into the hairpin. Serrano gets it back and into second position. Ura's there in the background ready to try and take profit, as well as Takuma Miyazono, but now it is Labutale that leads for the first time of asking in this race.
And you can tell as we get past halfway here, things getting slightly more aggressive at this time. Right there, that move down into turn one, Serrano getting the back of Labutale. Drumont trying to get to the inside. He tried a defensive move to hold him off as these 5 cars have condensed back together here. And I think for Serrano, he thought maybe if he could get to the lead, harder tires, maybe they'd race out of the pits a little bit, could get a bit of a gap, but absolutely not the case. He's now firmly in this pack.
I have to say, it's a bit of a shame that these leading runners did not go for an alternate strategy. I'd love to have seen somebody just bolt a set of soft tyres on in the middle stint for it, and just see if it works out. I suppose there's a lot to lose in those circumstances. You know, track position at Drumont, over the curb, lost time, and that sends Ura into the back of him there as well, who subsequently loses a place to Takuma Miyazono.
That was really sketchy, very close to losing it. This car is so finicky, it's such on a knife edge at times. It's very reactive, but if you get those big slides, they're hard to hold on to. Drumont did a great job through there, through the Le Mans chicane, holding on to that car, but loses a ton of time.
Yeah, really well done there for Kylian Drumont, but as you say, a shame there for him. As a result of that, he's now down into 5th position. He's got a fair bit of work to do to catch up onto the back of Miyazono and of Paul Ura. And look at that, he's just put a bit of daylight between Serrano and Labutale. Only about 7 or 8 tenths of a second or so, but just enough for them to not have to worry in their mirrors immediately behind. I don't think that means the top 2 are going to start attacking one another, but I wonder if they might be able to use that, get a bit of impetus, start working together now to build out a cushion over the likes of Miyazono, Ura and Drumont.
Yeah, they enjoyed seeing that from Drumont there with that check up into Paul Ura, and it slowed up enough that Miyazono was able to go by there, give them just this little bit of gap, so they're starting to think at these points, maybe we can get a gap, but you just know if you don't make it happen through the infield, that draft will condense you all back together. As Jose Serrano there with a bit of a lead over Labutale. They're not quite drafting the way we saw earlier between him and Drumont.
Yeah, he's starting to pull the pin now a bit, isn't he, here, Jose Serrano, and I wonder if that could prove to be a good move, because if he's able to get a bit of an advantage in a bit of track position, that would be a very welcome result. And I'd say his track position in terms of just, again, not having to worry about the immediacy of what's going on behind you in your mirrors. But I suppose the converse of that is if you start beginning to push, it means you're going to start needing to save fuel, and of course he's going to be expending more fuel because he hasn't got the slipstream like all of the other drivers stuck in that train behind. Karatz just picked up a penalty, by the way. I think he's just served that one, and presumably that must have been for track limits because we didn't see anything come up on the screen. Been quite an anonymous race so far for Adriano Karatza. De Bruyn and Sasaki under investigation for a collision there as well, so we'll pick the bones out of what happened there. But the upshot is De Bruyn is now down and into 10th position. Sasaki is plumb last by 4 seconds, so clearly something has happened there to the Japanese driver. It's not worked out at all for him.
And you think for Serrano and Labutale, they thought maybe they could get away. I'm starting to see that opportunity decrease right here as Miyazono gets back. Paul Ura getting up there as well. And so I just think they were in that zone of maybe potentially doing such a thing, but it's starting to look like it's going to condense back together like we've seen majority of these race amongst these 5 cars being so in a very tight pack.
So put me in the cockpit of these cars at the moment here then, Parker, because obviously we're in a bit of a quieter phase of the race. You know, in terms of the on-track action, they're not exactly dive-bombing each other at every corner. If you're Thomas Labutale, Takuma Miyazono, etc., you're sitting behind the drivers in the lead of this race. What's going through your mind? How are you planning your sort of final third?
I think at this time you're obviously assessing your competitors. Where do you think they're better than you? Where do you think that you could work and improve but a little bit, and also knowing when are they going to make that first move to get on those soft tires? When does that happen? Do you follow them? Do you try to do something different? Most likely you want to just follow the leader to get on those softs immediately, not let them get away. And so this portion of the race is just a bit of assessing at this time as you watch Labutale go to the lead over Jose Serrano. That same pass we've seen multiple times, and you're just trying to set yourself in a position where you feel like you can react to that pit stop, put those softs on, and be in a position to hopefully strike in that final stint.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Obviously, at other circuits where the slipstream maybe isn't so prominent, De Bruyn picks up a 1-second penalty for the incident with Takuma Sasaki, by the way, so he was clearly deemed as the aggressor. We didn't see exactly what happened, but yeah, just going back to that thought. So I suppose if you're the likes of, you know, Kylian Drumont, for example, you're at the back of this train at the moment. I mean, if you try and do the undercut and stick a set of soft tyres on before everybody else, sure, it might give you a bit of track positioning. Maybe you come out in clean air during your pit stop and it gives you that track position to be able to take advantage when everybody else makes their pit stop. But the problem is, it'll leave you so vulnerable at the end of the race because the slipstream is so powerful at this circuit. It's just not worth that gamble.
Yeah, the only way to avoid the slipstream or to try and combat it is just to be really good to the infield, right? And that's just typical of Daytona road course. No matter what you're racing, that's always the case. You try to do all the hard work to the infield to get away, to not allow the driver behind to have the easy work of utilizing the draft through the banking sections, but it's just such a tall task, and if you go earlier onto those softs and put yourself at a grip deficit, you're most likely not going to be able to hold them off down through the oval portions.
Side by side here with Serrano versus Labutale. Labutale was leading across the line. Serrano now back in front by the time we get down in towards T1. Look at Valerio Gallo, who's making a great ascension through the field. He's closed the deficit down to these hard shod runners and is really making hay whilst the sun shines. It's exactly what he needs to do because those medium tyres are going to start to come towards the end of their useful shelf life a bit sooner than these hard tyres, and he's got, of course, a pace advantage of about 0.6, 0.7 of a second or so, and he's really taking profit of it here. Is Valerio Gallo. He's made his way up through the field, up into 5th position. And he needs to do that, really, because if he wants track position, this is exactly how to do it while the field is all closed up.
This has been an awesome drive by him from the back of the pack, using an alternate strategy, getting on those mediums when these drivers are on the hards, and joining this front pack that now puts him in great position. If he can hang on here to when you go and put those softs on, he's now in the fight for the lead. We talked about before the race, maybe he had to think about just how do I get in position to get some points. He's already done that if he can hold on to this position. Now it's about being a part of the conversation for the win because you're just a couple cars behind, and we've seen how quickly people go from being the leader or second place to third to fourth and vice versa.
Yeah, and also as well, they've done the hard tyres, haven't they? Valerio Gallo, Economist Rose and Guy Barbara. So they've already gotten that phase of the race out of the way. So if he can get track position, there is a battle de facto for the race win, essentially, because he'll be on the same compound of tyres at the end of this one. The disadvantage may be if he's expended a bit more fuel. Look at this, and now kicking off. Miyazono lunging to the inside. Serrano and Ura also going 2 by 2 through the exit of turn 1. That's opening the door here. Valerio Gallo is going to get a bit messy here as we come in towards the hairpin bend. Drumont's ready to try and pick his pocket there as well. Gallo's in the middle of a bit of a sandwich here, and he might come off second best, but manages to get himself now alongside Drumont for the exit of the corner, and Serrano bails out of that battle as we come and flick it through the left-hander. Gallo's going to have the inside line of the grip under braking, gets himself through and into 4th place. That was an amazing bit of driving from all of those concerned in the first sector, because it looked like it could have got pretty ugly, that one.
And it put them all 3 wide in consecutive corners, and Serrano was the big loser of all this, being on the outside there of turn 3, the International Horseshoe. There's just no grip, especially if you're forced to the 3rd groove right there. He couldn't get accelerating, falls all the way back to 6, and has really been at the front 2 positions most of this race. He has serious work ahead of him.
Yeah, amazing job from all of those drivers, and for Valerio Gallo, he says he plays for fun, which helps him not get overloaded with training. I've known Valerio for quite a long time now, and he is one of the most calm, cool and collected characters in the Gran Turismo World Series, and also one of the most competitive. He knows how to pilot one of these machines, and he just does it for the absolute sheer joy of racing. Look at Ura all over the back here of Miyazono, but Gallo's coming through like a storm, pulls to the high side, goes to the outside. That's going to leave him a bit vulnerable, but he's got so much grip under braking, he's able to pull alongside Ura, and I think he's just got to bow out of it on the exit of turn 1, which he does so. But if that doesn't show you the difference in performance between worn medium and worn hard tyres, I don't know what will. Like I say, the only question mark for Valerio Gallo is, has he expended more fuel relative to those drivers in front of him, because it might cost him a bit later on when they start making their final pit stops and have to take fuel on board. Let's have a look here at Miyazono then, Serrano and Labutale. This is going down towards turn 1, and Miyazono lunged to the inside of Jose Serrano at the start of this most recent lap. He's now just dropped down to 3rd place because Paul Ura is through and into 2nd.
There's no safe place
honestly
in this top 5. It's his constant movement, constant actions. They're all moving around and jockeying for position, utilizing the draft and firing down the inside of certain corners, putting people in awkward positions. This is an awkward one right here. You got to bow out of it right here. You can't go side by side through the bus stop. It's just not possible in the X 2019. You'll be way slower than you want to be on the exit.
Blink and you'll miss it sort of stuff. The medium shot runners have pulled a bit of a blinder in this race, actually, to be honest, because they start on the hard tyre, they got that phase out the way, and now they're really taking profit because the field hasn't spread out like you might see in a more traditional style circuit, because of course the slipstream is just so powerful and the drivers just sitting in all of those trains. They've really been able to take profit in this mid-stage. It's brought a lot of them right into contention.
As we're on board here, Valerio Gallo looks to the outside right now. His right rear tire is really worn, so it's gonna be about how long can he hold on. Oh, it's so tight through there. It's so tough to be side by side. Both competitors have to work together as they go down into the International Horseshoe. A bit of contact.
That was Gallo getting 2 for the price of 1, going down into there as well. He went from 5th place up into 3rd place at the expense of Miyazono. Guy Barbara's there ready as well. This is going to start getting pretty scrappy before too long, and someone I'm sure is going to come off second best. We flick it through into the right-hander. Serrano's on the inside of Guy Barbara for 5th position. Gallo's there in 4th place. He looks pretty safe there for now, but as we come in towards the left-hander and come onto the banking, now we're going to start seeing the slipstream, and now we're going to see Guy Barbara getting right into contention for this one. Inestrosa, Cardinal and De Bruin, by the way, have all gone onto the soft tyres for their final stint in this race. That have taken fuel on board for that pit stop there as well. Through the banked left-hander we go as we head down in towards the Le Mans chicane. 2 by 2 at the sharp end of this one for the lead. Le Boutelet versus Paul Ura. Into the braking zone we go. Le Boutelet, the victor on that occasion. He holds on to the sharp end of this race.
And what was a 5-car pack has extended into a 7-car pack here as we get towards this final pit stop for the soft tires, happening any moment here.
Yeah, it's going to be any time now. These drivers are going to start coming in as they do. There we go. So into the box for Ura, Le Boutelet, Miyazono, and look, they're all following suit. They've got no choice. They're now bound by circumstances here. And the crucial thing is they're all going on to the soft tyre for the end of this race. But look at the fuel difference there. Serrano, he's managed to save fuel. He's got, what, 5 litres more than some of the other competitors. Gallo, for example, 22 litres. And it's 3 litres per second more refuelling time. So that's going to cost him time and possibly track position there here for Valerio Gallo. So that's what I was saying about that being the question mark over the latter stage of this race. So though he's gained track position here, it's going to leave him with a bit more work to do in the closing stage of this one. Now Ura has taken advantage of having saved a bit more fuel, and he goes through into the race lead against Thomas Le Boutelet. Miyazono's in 3rd. Gallo is into 4th position, ahead now of Jose Serrano, Kilian Drumont and Guy Barbara. So 7 cars in the battle for the lead with just under 6 laps now to go.
And Serrano was the big loser in that whole sequence there through the end of that last stint. He just lost that track position through the altercation down to turn 1, and now fighting for 5th here on the inside, back onto the banking through turn 6. He holds on to that over Guy Barbara, but he's got some serious work to do to get back to the pointy end of this field. It's going to be a tall task to navigate himself back up to that lead pack. They've got a bit of a gap now, and then make some passes.
Yeah, it's starting to splinter off here, hasn't it, really, from being that 7-car battle. It's sort of gone from a 7-car down to 1 4-car battle, and then you've got that gap of about 7/10 of a second, but it takes that one moment, that one mistake, and it goes from that 4 right back up to that 7-car battle, especially if these top 4 start squabbling amongst one another. If they start knocking 7 bells out of each other, then you've got a real... Exactly, that's what I mean. You've got a real battle on your hands. And I have to say, Valerio Gallo, I thought he was going to lose a bit of track position here, courtesy of having less fuel on board, but it's worked out really nicely for him. So maybe he underfueled his final stint. Maybe he just took a bit less fuel on board. He's calculated this one a bit more accurately than some of his other competitors, and that's why he's into 4th place and didn't drop down right to the end of that train of drivers.
And he's got the benefit of riding here behind these couple of drivers, utilizing that draft. Maybe he can make up for a little bit of that difference here, and then have enough to be able to strike later in those last few laps, because he knows he's timed out the fuel perfect.
Plenty of time for things to change, but at the moment, Jose Serrano's lead would be whittled down to just 2 points going into the World Finals in Fukuoka in December. You can see just how close it is here in terms of the battles. And then that's the thing, though, for Jose Serrano, he's in P5. He's won both World Series events so far. But you can see just what a difference it would make if he only gets 2 points on the board here tonight.
25 laps in this race, 8 cars in the lead pack right now. This is anyone's race, especially if they get to start dicing it up and side by side anytime. All these drivers waiting for the chance to strike.
Yeah, that 4-way battle is starting to just get reduced down ever so slightly, because Jose Serrano is not too far adrift. He's only about 9/10 of a second away, which might sound like a fair bit of time, but it's definitely within the slipstreaming range, and he's got enough time to continue closing that deficit down. And look at that, in fact, he's now gone to 2/10 of a second, so yeah, exactly that. Yep, Miyazono to the outside, Labutale in the middle, Jura on the inside, Gallo's there ready to try and pick his pocket as well. In we go to the first turn, Jura on the inside, Labutale on the outside then here, side by side with Serrano versus Miyazono in the background for position as well. Oh, Miyazono with a big lunge to the inside, contact, bang into the side of Labutale. Serrano's going to get shoveled to the curb on the outside, that's going to cost him drive, it's going to cost him a place to Valerio Gallo and also Guy Barbara there as well. Miyazono's now through into second as we ride on board with him. Barbara is on the outside here. Well, I thought it might be a couple more laps before the gloves started to come off, but, well, they come off and they're throwing the kitchen sink in it already.
See, elbows out here right now as we go through the infield and a little bit into Barbara there from Drummond. Just a hip check as they got onto the banking right now. 3 wide here for the 4th position, and Serrano watches all this, just trying to navigate through it. He continues to lose positions.
Yeah, England-Strohs is coming right into play for this one here as well. Guy Barbara is about 0.8 of a second off the back of these 7 drivers that are all fighting for the race lead. I say 7 drivers because Kylian Drummond has dropped back a little bit off of the top 3. It's about 1.3 seconds or so. So the sharp end of this one, Jura, he's trying to check out of this one here.
He loved what he saw behind him with all that jockeying position in 2 wide. It allowed him to gap out by 1.2 seconds. That's still within draft range, but Labutale and Miyazono have to get to work here, drafting with each other to get back to Jura.
Yeah, 3 to go then here as we come in towards the left-hander of turn 1. They've got to be sensible and smart about this one if they want to challenge for victory, and it would be a huge dent in the title challenge for Jose Serrano. I remind you, he won both World Series events in London and Berlin and has a 3-point advantage. That will be whittled down to 2 points as we go into the World Finals. So it's going to be a very tense time for Jose Serrano, I would imagine, in the cockpit of that car if he finishes in P5. But again, there's still a bit of time for him to try and turn around those fortunes.
And Paul Jura's just got 2 more tenths on that lead right now, up to 1.4 seconds. That's the biggest lead we've seen in this race yet, with just a couple laps to go. 1.5 now as they get onto the banking. He's doing exactly what we talked about, what we thought Jose Serrano was trying to do earlier and had the chance to do, and that is jet away from the field, get away from that draft, and see if you can get it to where they can't even get to you.
Up to nearly 320 kilometres now, over 320 kilometres now as we come in towards that chicane then. Labutale and Miyazono need to do everything they can to close the deficit down, because Miyazono and Miyazono rather, beg your pardon, and Labutale can see their chances of victory slipping through their fingers, because Jura is driving like he's left the gas on at the moment.
Look at him weaving, he's trying to avoid the draft. He's trying to break the draft by weaving a little bit through the section there on the straightaway. It looks odd, but that's exactly what he's attempting to do.
Yeah, coming down in towards turn 1 then. So through to that left-hander we go, and it's ebbed and flowed so much for this race, hasn't it? Valerio Gallo was a little bit loose there in the first corner. That might leave him vulnerable to attack from Angelina Stroza. So Gallo's challenge for victory looks to have faltered somewhat in the closing stages, as it now has ebbed and flowed just a little bit more, and from what was a 7, nearly 8 car scrap a couple of laps ago, it's now reduced down to, well, one driver who's got a lead of about a second or so. Then you've got Miyazono and Labutale involved in their own scrap with one another, and you wonder again whether fuel might be coming into it. I mentioned about Valerio Gallo maybe under fueling a bit. Look at that, he's got 9 litres relative to some other drivers in front of him who've got 13, 14 litres, so they might be able to push that bit harder in the closing stages of this race.
Yeah, he didn't want all that tossing about that we had there where they were running into each other and messing around. It really broke up the draft for him and put him in a position where he had to be not able to utilize the draft to stay up there track position wise, and so it's fallen back to 6. It just hadn't quite worked out.
Yeah, Paul Jura's played an absolute blinder in this race though. Can he hold it though to the end is the crucial question. Look at the run that Labutale got on the exit there of the Le Mans chicane. He's going for the high line on the outside. It's a longer route around that corner, but he gets it back into the slipstream quite nicely there. Miyazono, as you said, trying to break that toe, I'm sure, before too long. Labutale goes for the outside line as they go 2 by 2 across it. 2 to go at the end of this one here. Labutale with the outside line for second. Miyazono on the inside, down in towards turn 1. Miyazono will have track position, but when he's able to hold it, Labutale's going to get hung out to dry on the outside here. And again, just one corner of battling, and look who's there in the background. Jose Serrano and Kylian Drummond. They are right away ready to start nipping at his heels for those podium places.
They're saying, we're back, we're here, we can see you. If you get side by side again, we're ready to strike. And I thought Labutale Bourdais was trying to use the draft there to help Miazano get back towards Paul Ura, but he just didn't have the chance. It didn't work out. The timing was awkward there down the straightaway, and they actually lost a bit of time.
Yeah, so through on towards the banking we go once more. Here is Jose Serrano, the man who has dominated the GT World Series of the Nations Cup. You can see his compatriot at the sharp end of this race, just a second or so down the road, and you wonder whether the chance of victory has slipped through Jose Serrano's fingers here this evening in Los Angeles, because he's sitting P4. Anything can happen, but it's a tall order to be able to close that deficit down on a circuit as tricky and as reliant on the slipstream as this one, especially with the other drivers in front also having the advantage of that slipstream. So we come round the final corner, we come across the timing line ready to start the final lap of racing in the Nations Cup. It's Ura, Miyazono, Bourdais, Serrano, Drumont, all separated by a very small margin in this battle for victory here at Daytona. Who will be claiming the checkered flag?
And they just cut a half second out of that lead for Ura right now. They're going to be right on his heels. They get back to the banking if they can stay right here. So Bourdais into Miyazono. Oh my goodness!
Miyazono gets spun round. Bourdais is hit into the side there as well by Kylian Drumont on the exit of the corner, so the Frenchman's race has really come undone, and you would imagine there's going to be a penalty coming the way of Thomas Bourdais. It's opened the door though for Drumont. His compatriot walks straight through on the inside, and Miyazono, the big loser in all of that, is he's dropped down into 5th place and is somewhat spread the field out in this battle for the victory then here. Ura's gap is now up to over a second, with his compatriot Jose Serrano just a second or so down the road. Can Serrano invent something in the final sector of this race to challenge against Paul Ura's lead?
It's going to happen all down here at the Le Mans chicane. It's all about how you get through here. If it's clean and up to stuff, he'll be just fine here, just under a second lead, but still, even with that 8/10, 7/10, he should be fine.
Bourdais with a 3-second penalty. That's his race done, and any chance of points going completely out of the window here tonight. What a shame there for Bourdais, an even bigger shame though for Takuma Miyazono, who lost out on a chance of challenging for that win. No such bother though for Paul Ura. He comes across the timing line to take a commanding victory. Paul Ura wins World Series 3 in the Nations Cup here in Los Angeles, ahead of Jose Serrano. It's a Spanish 1-2 in LA, ahead of Kylian Drumont, who completes the podium. What an absolutely phenomenal drive, and Jose Serrano extends his lead in the championship. If you remember, in the mid-stage of that race, we were talking about Jose Serrano in 5th place, possibly seeing his championship lead.